Alright guys, I'm Paul Campbell, a travel and landscape photographer currently based in Melbourne, and this is what's in my camera bag. Now we do have a fair few things to get through, so we're going to make it as fast and as efficient as possible. Let's jump in. So first things first, we're going to talk about my camera bag. I think that's what tradition would have it. I've had this thing for maybe 4 years and it does wonders. It's simple, it does the job. So this is called BagSmart. It's one of the standard ones you can get off Amazon for around $100, and there's a couple of reasons why I got this. The first thing first, it was cheap. At the time when I was just starting out photography and getting into this thing, I didn't want to invest too much money, so this is kind of why I got it. The second thing is I'm really apprehensive about being in less than desirable neighborhoods or locations and people knowing that I'm carrying lots of camera equipment with me. So this doesn't really look like a camera bag. It's nice, sleek in design. It kind of fits in with my aesthetic. One of the other reasons why I got it, as I mentioned, safety is a major thing when you're carrying thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment, and I love the fact that this bag opens from the back. Now this thing can hold up to a 17-inch MacBook Pro. Inside, like most camera bags, we have a couple of compartments. So here is where I keep all my lenses and camera bodies when I'm traveling around, and this is kind of where I keep my drone and extra t-shirts. Basically anything that I can't fit in here goes in here. It is not the fanciest bag. I'm not the type of person to go out and buy a brand new bag every time a brand new one comes out. This thing has done the job for 3 or 4 years, but I think it's maybe time for an upgrade. I'm not sure what I'm going to get now that I'm, properly invested in photography and videography. Go! Done. At any one time, I'm carrying 2 bodies. I'm carrying a photography body and a video camera. My brand of choice is Sony. So my photography camera, which is my most recent addition to my camera bag, is the Sony a7R III. The autofocus is blazing fast. It has 42 megapixels, so it has all the resolution you need. You can shoot in APS-C sensor mode for when you don't want to be shooting in those larger file formats. Form factor and the customization of the body is hands down the best. You can custom map pretty much any button on the camera to do whatever you want. Maybe it's not as chunky as I would like it in the grip department. I find after maybe a couple of hours shooting it gets a little bit crampy in the hand. But yeah, otherwise I would highly recommend this camera. Moving on to my video camera, and this is probably the most expensive thing in my camera bag. It is the Sony a7S III. If you're watching this video, you've probably seen all the other videos regarding this camera. It is hands down the best video camera out at the moment in a mirrorless form factor. It's shooting in 10-bit, it's shooting in 4K, 4K 120, 4K 60. It basically doesn't overheat. Form factor and ergonomics of the camera are being fine-tuned over the years to land in this camera. It even has a flippy screen, which is fantastic. But that's not why I love this camera. I love the color science in this body. When you compare the color science from the older bodies into this one, the skin tones are so much more pleasing. The highlight roll-off is that much better. It's just a much more pleasing image to look at. And that kind of rolls into the video spec, which it has 10-bit color, which is phenomenal, and the reason that I got this camera. If you don't know what 10-bit is, it's basically a larger file format and it captures more color data for you to push and pull in post-production. I think that's an oversimplification, but that's pretty much it. I'd highly recommend this camera to anyone that is trying to get into videography. Cool, now we've got that out of the way, let's move on to lenses. So I only carry 3 lenses when I'm traveling at any one point. I carry 2 zooms and a prime. These lenses are, I'll start with my favorite one, it's the Sony 70-200 f4. Now I opted for the f4 over the f2.8 because I don't want to carry that extra weight, and I'm primarily shooting landscapes, so I'm mainly shooting at around f9, f8 to make sure everything's in focus and get the crispiest image possible. Coming down to the lens that we're currently shooting on now is the Sigma 24-70 2.8. If you're in the market to get a 24-70, I highly recommend the Sigma over the Tamron and the Sony. Performance and quality of this lens is unmatched, and I would say is better than the Sony version. For the amount of money you're going to save when getting this lens, definitely the number one. Highly recommend it. Moving on to primes. I carry a Canon 85mm 1.8. The reason I got this was because it's super cheap at the time. I got it in a cash converters for £70, which is ridiculously cheap for that type of lens. Now, although that I'm adapting it through the MC11 adapter from Sigma, it works perfectly fine and gets the job done if you don't have the budget for a native lenses. This is a fairly old lens and it does the job most of the time. The autofocus is pretty darn quick, but does not work in video mode, which is a little bit of a drawback. The image you do get out of this lens is very sharp, but you do have some issues when it comes to fringing. Probably wouldn't recommend this lens, as the Sony and Sigma versions you can get now are fairly cheap, and I would probably hold out for those. Next up is ND filters. Now, up until recently, I've had multiple NDs for multiple different lenses, and that's basically how I've operated. So my filter of choice is the Freewell 2 to 5 stop ND filter. This thing has a magnetic lens cap, it has hard stops on the 2 and 5, so you don't have any cross polarization. The glass quality is pretty much up there. For the price you can get this at, it is an absolute steal. It rivals the Peter McKinnon ND filters you can get from Polar Pro. Some of the things are not quite as nice, like the throw on it is not as smooth, and the color cast in it is slightly more green than the Polar Pro ones. You can get the all-day set for the price of one Peter McKinnon Polar Pro one. For my other lenses, I basically just use step-down rings and it does the job. So nothing fancy when it comes to audio. I have the VideoMic Pro Plus 2. The reason I got this one is because it turns off and on with the cameras. It does the job. The sound quality you can get out of it is phenomenal, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. Moving on to drones. So if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I love a drone shot. I love drone photography, I love drone videography. It's just such a unique perspective you can get on the world, and that's kind of why I've opted in for a decent drone. My choice of drone is the Mavic Air 2. I think it's the perfect blend between compact and quality, and it fits perfectly in the top compartment of my bag. This drone is probably going to stay with me for the next couple of years, as the image quality you get out of it is fantastic, especially for the price point. Moving on to the very last camera that I carry with me pretty much wherever I go. This is the Canon 35mm. The reason I got this is because it looks badass. It's small, it's tactile, it's black. It looks pretty cool. It has a fixed focal length of 40mm, and I have no idea what the image looks out of it. I'm still on my first roll of film when it comes to this, as I got it maybe a month ago. We're on image number 34, and the sound of the shutter on this camera is next level. I love it. It's one of the most satisfying things ever. Fuck. I feel like every photographer should have a film camera with them, whether it be a point and shoot or something a bit more upscale. Everybody loves film, and it just gives that nostalgic feeling every time you look at a film photograph, doesn't it? I love this thing. Moving on to laptops. Now, I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I'm going to pop the specs up on screen now, but my laptop of choice is the Dell XPS 15 9500. Now, this thing is an absolute beast. It has a 4K OLED touchscreen with 500 nit display, which gives you a really vibrant image. This is the spec'd out model with the 64GB of RAM, 1TB of internal storage, a 1650 Ti NVIDIA graphics card, which I have no idea about. It cuts through pretty much everything. It cuts through 4K editing workflows, heavy Photoshop projects, it cuts through After Effects for the most part. It's an absolute beast and does the job perfectly. If you find yourself about to buy a Dell laptop, I'd highly recommend paying the extra little bit of money you need to get the premium support. I've had a fair few issues with all my Dell laptops, and it's always really nice to have tech support on hand. For the extra couple $100 that you pay for the Dell premium support, they will send an engineer out with parts to any location you are in the world to fix your laptop. If they don't need to send someone out and it's a software issue, they will take control of your laptop remotely and do it all while you sit and watch morning TV. Now, I would go ahead and recommend this laptop to anyone out there. Just get the premium support. I highly recommend it, and it's worth the money. Moving on to everyone's favorite topic, storage. Throughout both my camera bodies, I have the Lexar Professional Gold SD cards and the silver ones. I use the gold ones for the Sony a7S III, and I use the silver ones for my photography body. The reason I do that is because you need a minimum of a V90 card to record in the higher frame rates at 4K in the Sony a7S III. These things have been pretty solid throughout the entire time I've used them, never had an issue, but over the last couple of weeks when trying to record and play around with the 240 frames, they've had some issues with just not recording the data to card. I have to do the file recovery. 9 times out of 10 it does not recover the files. I'm considering investing in the CF Express Type A cards, but I'm waiting for a third-party company to bring them out because the ones you get from Sony are ridiculously expensive and not worth it. I don't know, I'm the type of person, if a memory card fails on me, you're dead to me. I might try the pro grade ones out, we're gonna see. Next up, we are talking about hard drives. So for primarily all the editing that I do on a day-to-day basis on the current projects, whether that be photo editing or video editing, I use the Samsung T5 SSD 1TB. And like most content creators, I have the little Velcro system on the back of my laptop so I can move around the house without having a hard drive just dangling freely. I'd highly recommend this as they're fairly inexpensive at the moment, roughly 150 Australian dollars, and basically unrivaled for that sort of price. So once I've finished any of my projects from this, they get transferred to my Lacy rugged hard drives. These things are fairly fast, reliable, and you know, they'll last forever basically. I have a 6TB and a 4TB, and this basically has all my footage from the last 3 years since coming to Australia. That's pretty much all the major camera equipment that I carry in my camera bag. The other additional things I will carry, this little compartment here. And yes, it is an old DJI Mavic Air travel case. What I carry in this is a little air blower for my sensor. I carry the Peak Design arm strap. This is kind of cool because it has a little magnetic point, and when I'm shooting street, I always have this on me. Additional things I'll carry are the Peak Design extra toggles for the quick release system, along with multiple Allen keys and extra tripod plate because I am forever losing these things. Additional things I'll also carry is a lens cloth and a USB to SD card reader. When I'm backing things up on the field, I like to do it all at the same time because I'm slightly impatient or efficient. This case is forever changing and will probably change depending on the shoots I go on or the adventures I go on. The other thing I like to carry with me is the Peak Design camera strap. This thing is basically a seatbelt for your camera. It's got the nice quick release system, which is not that quick. It's a little bit fiddly at times, but it does the job. You feel super secure when you've got this around your neck. And the very last thing that I keep in my camera bag are a set of decent headphones for editing videos on the go, listening to music. I don't like to edit with in-ear earphones. I like to have a nice headset. These things are pretty cheap and they are recommended by audio engineers everywhere. And that brings us to the end of what's in my camera bag. That's pretty much everything I carry when I'm on an adventure that lasts more than a day. The only additional things that are pretty obvious that I didn't cover are probably batteries and the chargers that I need for all the equipment that I carry. So future predictions, I'm probably going to get rid of that 85mm and invest in the Sony or Sigma version, basically because I need something that does in video. For my camera body, I do want to have either a new A1, which is ridiculously expensive at the moment, or whatever photography camera Sony brings out next. I basically want the video specs to match on the cameras. The 8-bit that you get with this is not the best. And drone wise, that's the main thing, drone. DJI recently released an FPV drone, and I want it. I want it so bad. It's basically idiot proof, which is perfect because I like to push my luck when I've got my drone, so give me something that can flip and rotate and go 4 times as fast. There might be some issues. So that's it for this week's video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed me talking about gear in the least technical way possible, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all those YouTube things. But until next time, guys, peace.